here, verse 8. Bhakti Vakusabhishade Shanam Jaladapam Palahati Vikimilita Jamnaam Keshavadrita Haladara Rupa Vajradhishamade. Here, Rajiv Goswami is singing about Dash Avatar Stotra, and he talks about how Lord Baladev pulled the Jamuna River to him on his visit to Vrindavan after Krishna and Balarāma had already moved to Dwarka. Okay, now you see one verse up there that I guess we can just chant together, and then we'll read a little, speak a little from Bhagavatam. Kadachit tata Govindo Ramash Chatbhuta Vikrama Jaratur Vaniratriam Madhya Gaurajayoshitam Kadachit tata Govindo Ramashadbhuta Vikrama Jaratur Vaniratyam Madhyam Gaurajayoshitam. So, the translation is that once Govinda and Lord Rama, the performer of wonderful feats, were playing in the forest at night with the young girls of Braj. Let's just repeat that. Once Lord Govinda and Lord Rama, the performer of wonderful feats, were playing in the forest at night with the young girls of Braj. Yes. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnana Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. I selected this verse because the Chaitanya Bhagavat begins with this topic. It begins with Vrindavan Das Thakur. This is the other authorized biography of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Chaitanya Charitamrita and Chaitanya Bhagavat. They both have their different flavors, but Chaitanya Bhagavat deals more with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's earlier pastimes, his childhood pastimes, while these Chaitanya Charitamrita deals more with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes of Jagannath Puri. So these two complement each other, and first Chaitanya Bhagavat was written, and then followed Chaitanya Charitamrita. That's why there's so much reference to Chaitanya Bhagavat in Chaitanya Charitamrita. And Vrindavan Das Thakur introduces Lord Nityananda's tattva, Lord Balarāma's tattva, to make clear that of course Lord Nityananda is Balarāma, but then who is Balarāma? And that Lord Balarāma is actually the second form of Krishna. So literally speaking, Krishna's other form, which is different only in complexion and different in age. But aside from that, there's no difference in them, and because there's no difference in them, therefore Lord Balarāma also participates in the rasa dance, which is the theme here of this pastime, or this lila. The whole narrative here is about Krishna and Balarāma playing Holi. So this is in the spring, and after playing Holi and so on, then they also enjoy rasa dance. And at that time, Shankachuta comes and he captures some gopis, and then Srimati Radharani, and Krishna kills them, and that you can read. It's in Krishna book in the 34th chapter, and there's a lot to be said about that lila. But here the basic point being is as Krishna is very mula, very fundamental, very foundation, similarly Lord Balarāma also has such a very essential and constitutional position in terms of tattva. My time is a little limited, and kirtan went a little late, which is good. But I'd like to just discuss certain issues that are related to Lord Balarāma, and which I guess we can start with who is Lord Balarāma, as I mentioned here. He's Krishna in a second transcendental form, and yet he's Krishna's older brother. And as Krishna's older brother, although he participates in Krishna's lila, and we see that in this particular pastime he's also engaging in a rasa dance with these gopis are different. They are not Krishna's gopis, but they are actually gopis who have attachment and attraction to Krishna. To Balarāma. They have exclusive attraction to Balarāma. But still, they're together. Details of that Bhagavatam doesn't go into. Of course, as you can see, this is following on from Krishna's Ras Lila. So the whole theme and the whole mood continues on. But in terms of Krishna's expansions, and Krishna expands himself into so many forms, so therefore we see that Krishna's first expansion is as Baladev. And Balarāma, although Krishna is also different from Krishna, and particularly he serves Krishna. He serves Krishna in many different capacities according to rasa and according to spiritual truths. And he serves Krishna in a mood of neutrality, in a mood of servitude, in a mood of friendship, in a mood of parental. The only mood he doesn't serve him is in the conjugal mood. And which is an interesting thing, because sometimes there's this concept of that there's such a thing as homosexuality in the spiritual world. But Baladev doesn't serve Krishna in a conjugal mood. Rather, he expands himself into Srimati Radharani's younger sister, Ananga Manjari, and that is, in other words, in a different form. So that's this sort of misconstrued idea that whatever is here in the material world must be there in the spiritual world in a pure form. So this is the pure form. That's the logic behind it. Well, if it's here, it must be there. So Balarāma serves Krishna in that particular capacity, and then expansions come. On one side, expansions of Shakti, they emanate from Śrīmati Radharani, as Śrīmati Radharani is also, in one sense, non-different than Krishna, but she's Krishna's Shakti, and Balarāma is, in terms of being Vishnu Tattva. So Balarāma, and from Balarāma comes Mula Shankarshan, and from Mula Shankarshan comes Maha Shankarshan, and Maha Shankarshan comes Mahavishnu, and Gauravakshai Vishnu, Shivavakshai Vishnu, and so on. And Chaitanya Charitamrita describes how he is actually the personification of the Sandhini Shakti, existence. Ladini, Sandhini, and Samvit. So Ladini means pleasure, Sandhini means existence, and Samvit means cognizance or knowledge. Who is Itvan fordítása mindenkiért, aki így tud mindenkiért angolul?
Van fordítás.
Really? So Sandhini means existence. It means we exist. I think people may have different agreements, disagreements on things, but one is that we do exist, and so we exist. And why is it that we exist? Because Lord Balarāma exists, and Balarāma then becomes actually the basis of all existence. Krishna's existence depends on Balarāma, although of course Balarāma depends on Krishna, and Balarāma exists because of Krishna. But in terms of, apparent support, it's like, Atlas holds up the planet, but who does Atlas stand on? So, similarly, Balarāma is existence. We exist, everything exists, and so when we say that Sat, Chit, Ananda, existence is a very fine potency, substance, energy, and we're also made up of that. And Krishna is in terms of his concept of cognizance, or actually in a more refined form, he's actually rasa, raso-vaisa. And then Srimati Radharani is the personification of Hladini, or of ecstasy. And the whole concept of Balaram's existence then sort of comes down, well, it comes down to a potentially controversial point. But anyway, Balaram expands himself to all the inhabitants of Vrindavan. So all the inhabitants of Vrindavan exist, and their existence is dependent on Lord Balaram. Balaram expands himself as Mula Shankashan, so in Vaikuntha, then all of the, in Dwarka, because in Dwarka, Balaram, just as Krishna is Vasudeva in Dwarka, so Shankashan, when we say Shankashan, means he's the original Shankashan. So in Dwarka, all of the inhabitants of Dwarka and Mathura, they are all expansions of Lord Baladeva. And then Mahashankashan means in Vaikuntha. All of the residents of Vaikuntha are all expansions of Mahashankashan. And then there's Mahavishnu. And Mahavishnu is the source of Shivadakshay Vishnu and Garbhadakshay Vishnu in reverse order, and then of all living entities as well. So whether the living entities have gone to sleep in Mahavishnu's body, or whether they originate from him, that becomes a controversial point that we don't get into, but he's also the master of this Tatashta Shakti. So in terms of Tattva, these are the different relevant expansions of Lord Balaram. Additionally, Balaram is the principle of Guru. So the Akhanda Guru Tattva, the original and foundational Guru Tattva, and of course when we talk about Balaram, once again we speak about Lord Nityananda. So he's Guru in the sense that when we say Shakshad Harit Vinasamasta Shastir, that empowerment is coming through and from the medium of Lord Balaram, to know Krishna. In other words, to know Krishna, to be empowered to know Krishna is coming, and therefore it's by the grace of the spiritual master, Yasya Prasada, Bhagavad Prasada, by the grace of the spiritual master that you know Krishna, because Balaram is different from Krishna, and therefore he gives the empowerment to be able to know Krishna. So in that sense, Vaishnavas, that's why Shakshad Harit Vinasamasta Shastra. How does something like that go on? And of course it becomes a matter of both faith and then later on realization for devotees that they then actually see that yes, my spiritual master is non-different than Krishna. Non-different than Krishna in the sense that he's empowered by Krishna. Not that he is Krishna, but that he's Krishna's representative. And not representative just by delegation, by representative by potency, And how much potency is there, just like Lord Balarāma then expands himself into different types of incarnations. But different incarnations have different degrees of empowerment. Sometimes different degrees of empowerment by Shakti, different degrees of empowerment by qualities. Sometimes they're empowered greater or lesser. Similarly, spiritual master becomes empowered to greater and lesser degrees according to their level of Krishna consciousness. And recognizing that Krishna consciousness is problematic because it requires Krishna consciousness. And when you're not Krishna conscious, then it appears that not only it appears that the spiritual master is an ordinary person, it looks like Krishna is an ordinary person. Maybe a very beautiful person, but it still looks like an ordinary person. And more or less for most people, when Krishna was present, because they weren't Krishna conscious, they thought that Krishna was also an ordinary person. So it's a very interesting and a very sublime science, and that sublime science comes. And the empowerment, particularly, we see this is a very interesting topic that Bhaktivinoda Thakur speaks about, and this is how the demons of Braj represent different types of anarthas. And he explains how Krishna destroys most of them, and then of course there are these demons that Balarāma kills. And Balarāma kills Dhenukasura, and Balarāma kills the Pralambasura. And Dhenukasura these were these asses or donkey demons that lived in Talavan, and cowherd boys. This tal fruit is a very aromatic fruit, so from far away cowherd boys were smelling this tal fruit, but everyone knew you can't go there because they knew that there was this Dhenukasura demon, and it was him as well as his other friends who were also donkeys like that. And of course donkeys are small, and then there are these asses. Asses are different. Asses are much bigger. Sometimes they're called jackasses. They're much larger. And of course these were demons, and they were human eating and so on. And their duty was that they guarded this Talavan forest, because from this tal fruit it seemed like there was extracted a type of liquor. Ultimately they made a type of liquor, and that went off to Kamsa. So they were really relished that. What resembles the tal fruit now is the date ras tree. So that date ras, you can drink that. It's very good, but you have to drink it before sunrise. If you drink it, it has to be collected before sunrise. After sunrise, it becomes an intoxicant. So then you can't drink it. It's very, very healthy. And from that date ras, they also make date ras gore, which is 1,000,000 times better than gore that they make from sugar cane. Get it in Mayapur. Very, very wonderful. But not exactly the same. It seems like it's somewhat different species. And the cowherd boys, they asked Krishna, says, we want to eat some of the fruit itself. So do something, and so they went under the protection of Krishna and Balarāma. And then, to make a long story short, there was this big fight, and Dhenukasura was a descendant of Bali Maharaj. So, was a descendant of Hiranyakashipu. And Lord Nishinga had given the promise to Prahlad Maharaj that he would not kill any of his descendants. So then Krishna didn't kill him. He fought with him, but then he left it to Balarāma to kill him. And then the others he killed. And the characteristic of a donkey or an ass is that they're stubborn and they're stupid. So this kind of donkey stupidity and this kind of stubbornness, this becomes destroyed by the grace of Guru. And this is actually the first thing that needs to be eliminated. So what is that stubbornness? The stubbornness is, and a donkey, one of the symptoms donkey is that, Manjari, when is it that I have to leave? 9:15. 9:15.
You have to be there at 10.
And I have to do puja to Radha Damodar also. And it's a 9:45. Anyway, a donkey, a male donkey, when he approaches a female donkey, then she kicks him in the face with her hooves. But he keeps coming back, So he's pretty stupid, you gotta be. We're very similar. We're very similar to a donkey. And of course, there are other examples of a donkey's stupidity. Is that Prabhupada gives the example that they work carrying these huge loads for a washerman just to get a little grass. But there's grass everywhere anyway, and you can get it for free. So why work for it? And these are same examples. We're here in the material world, and we're also very stupid. We keep getting kicked in the face by Maya, and we keep coming back for more. So life after life after life, we suffer, but we're still attached. And not only do we get kicked as a result of sex life, is very complicated thing, sex life. Then you have children, then you have to work, then you have to maintain a family, then you have to maintain a house, then you have to educate them, and then there's grandchildren, and you're just entangled, and then the next life, it continues again. And meanwhile you suffer for sinful activities, so you're suffering. And of course what's going on here in the material world is we got to get an education, we got to be working really hard. What are you really working for? Food. That food, it's there, it grows for free. Krishna doesn't charge for it. So the fruit is growing on the tree, and the wheat is growing in the ground, and yes, you have to do some minimal work, but relatively speaking, it's free. And we're having to work more and more and more and more for something that's actually free. So, becoming free from this misconception, spiritual master, Guru, Lord Balarāma's grace, starts when we realize that I don't want to be so stupid anymore. And I want to solve this cycle of repeated birth and death. I want out of this type of life because I'm suffering. And to recognize that I'm suffering and I want to bring an end to this. So it's very difficult. And of course, what is it? Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya. this kind of ignorance, this kind of stupidity, and the stubbornness of you keep coming back in the material world for more and more and more and more of the same, and we keep suffering and we keep coming back for more. Maybe in this life I'm going to make it work. Maybe this time I'm going to make it work. So, knowledge. With knowledge, your eyes open up, and I realize, why? This is crazy. And that's the beginning of Krishna consciousness, when I realized that, all right, it may be habitual, and therefore some desire may be there, but I'm not continuing on with this. This is like madness to live in this type of life. So that type of illusion, and of course the other is, and what really binds you here is this Palambasura, Pungsa Sriyu Maituni Bhavameta Taromito Riddhaya Granti Ahu. This knot, this sex life, causes a strong knot of attachment that comes from husband and wife or whatever, whoever. Now you just say partners because you don't know what the combination is anymore. But this attachment, and that attachment to then offspring and then home, Taro mito riddhaya granti aho ato griha kshetra, and so on, all of these things. And that attachment is very, very strong, like a knot in the heart. And trying to unravel that knot, it's a very painful procedure. So riddhaya granti ahu. And these are the blessings of Balarāma, the blessings of spiritual master, that we become free or liberated from these. There are different controversies, and there's very interesting things about exactly how old is Balarāma. I wrote a whole appendix on Balarāma's age. There are contradictory things. There's certain scriptural statement that says in black and white Balarāma is a year older, and then there are other acharyas who just say that he's 2 weeks older, and whether they actually mean 2 weeks older or a year and 2 weeks older. Anyway, unfortunately, they don't have so much time to get into that. And of course, like Krishna, Balarāma is born in Vrindavan. He's born from Mother Rohini, but he always considers himself to be the son of Nanda Maharaj, and that Mula Sankarshan, who we read about, who was transferred from Mathura into Rohini's womb, that was the Mula Sankarshan who was actually merged into the original Balarāma, in the same way and similarly Krishna and Vasudeva Krishna entered into Krishna's body. So, and of course not only Balarāma, but Rohini Devi, she is also, although later on she lives in Dwarka, and unlike the other residents of Vrindavan, she left Vrindavan. She left and went and lived in Dwarka. And there was reason for that, because she was just one of the very few people who were actually could testify and could speak about Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan to the residents of Dwarka. and one of which consequences of that discussion is this pastime of how Jagannath, Balarāma, and Subhadra appear in this very unusual form. So today is Lord Balarāma's appearance. We should fast. Devotees fast until, what are we fasting till midday? Others sometimes fast, just as with Krishna's appearance. In any case, Srila Prabhupada would tell us on this day that Nayam Atva Balahinena Labhya, that Lord Balarāma is also the source of all strength, because he's the source of existence. So existence means strength. So everything depends on Lord Balarāma, but not just physical strength, but spiritual strength. And we need spiritual strength. Spiritual strength comes from sadhana. If you don't have spiritual strength, you can't overcome Dhenukasura in you. You can't overcome Parambasura. So Dhenukasura, anyway, you can't get into, but Dhenukasura, they sort of whirled and threw like that, and Parambasura and hit him on the head. These things all have significance, and it sort of takes this kind of actions to free ourselves from these bad habits. But yes, you need that blessings of Lord Balarāma to have that spiritual strength. But the blessings are the process of sadhana bhakti. And unless we practice that process properly, that is Lord Balarāma's blessing. So the blessing is how to actually practice, and then you will get Balarāma's strength, and that strength to be able to resist the temptations of Maya while the heart becomes purified. Otherwise, one's not, and therefore we see that that there are many those who try to come to the platform of perfection, but they can't quite make it for different reasons. And Bhagavatam is full of different stories of people who succumb to the material energy, succumb to some apsara or something. So similarly, if we don't have that type of blessing, that spiritual strength, then the chances are that we also become overwhelmed. So we should always pray to Lord Balarāma and also then follow the process that we're given. And in that way, then we should not, and of course that was one of the teachings from that Jamuna Karshana Lila, is that Jamuna Devi thought he can't be God. God doesn't get intoxicated. He doesn't talk like this and behave in this way. In other words, he thought he was an ordinary person because of certain types of conduct. Of course, spiritual masters aren't supposed to get intoxicated. That is it. But in terms of a particular appearance, conduct, and so on, very careful, and Prabhupada would repeat that over and over again. That there's everything that we see in this world, there's always more than meets the eye. And we should learn to see deeply, and it requires knowledge. And when one becomes very advanced, then one may be able to see, because one has spiritual vision. But in the meantime, one should be able to see with the eyes of knowledge, divya jnana. So we should, shastra, chakshus, we should be able to see through the eyes of scripture and the eyes of knowledge. Okay. Jai Shri Baladev Ji ki jai. Jai Shri Siddhanta Jai Guranga ki jai. Jai Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai. Jai Nitai Gaur Premanandi.
Jai.